land services as a sustainable, within the sustainable ag team as a senior land services officer. So before we begin tonight, I'd like to pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the land and extend that respect to elders past, present and emerging. I'm dialing in from Wiradjuri country, so from Wagga tonight. With us tonight is Phil Graham, who is a livestock consultant based in Yass. Phil worked with the Department of Ag for, I think, close to 4 decades, is it, Phil? And then has since, started his own private consultancy business known as Graham Advisory. Phil and I have worked together the last couple of years to deliver programs to 4 groups within the Riverina. And we'll continue to work closely as I'm the new project lead for Farming Forecaster. So I'm sure Phil will touch a bit more on the background of Farming Forecaster, but essentially it's a decision support tool for graziers, which is freely available on any internet browser. And this webinar was organised based on the fact that 20 soil moisture probes have been installed within the Eastern Riverina in September of last year. And so within the last few weeks, we've had that data from the soil moisture probes been uploaded onto the Farming Forecaster website. So I'll hand over to Phil now. If you have any questions at all during the point, either take yourself off mute or ask them in the chat box and I can ask Phil. So thank you, Phil. Hand over to you.
Thanks, Hannah, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. There's the address for Farming Forecaster. Anyone can access it free of charge. The plan by the committee who now run Farming Forecaster, which is led by producers, is that it will stay a free site. I'm just going to step you through a number of key bits about understanding the site, and also look at some of the scenarios that are playing out at present across the Riverina. So I'm just going to drop in and out of a whole range of, I might have picked 8 or 10 the sites in the Riverina. This Farming Forecaster now is occupying about half of New South Wales, all of Tasmania, part of Western Australia, and if we can get some money over the line, Victoria's wanting to come on board as well. So it's certainly expanding. There's about 200 sites across Australia at present. Once you go on, this is the first screen you see. I just want to highlight some of the things I've circled. The 2 things up the top in red. Left-hand side's telling us about the probe. So the probe's now in the ground. That information comes to the website and is updated a number of times a day. So I created these screenshots this morning. So maybe at about 10 o'clock. So when I downloaded this at 10 o'clock for the Adelong, so if we look top right-hand corner, the first site that comes up in the Riverina is the Adelong one. It's in alphabetical order. The information was 2 hours old. So basically that probe data came off the probe in the paddock at about 8 o'clock this morning, where the data was 36 minutes prior to it. The right-hand side's the pasture forecast. That's not updated daily. That gets updated every week. So what you're looking at there was updated 3 days ago. Always look at the updates. If there's something wrong, you'll see that it'll tell you, well, this hasn't been updated for a day or a week or something. Next one down, the purple circle. The probes that were put into the ground were put in such that the first sensor's at 20 centimetres. So we're not getting any information on the soil. And when I say the sensors are around 20 centimetres, so they're about part of the sensors 2 centimetres above the 20, and the other part of the sensors 2 metres below the 20. And it's measuring the difference between those 2 points. So it's measuring about a 4 to 5 centimetre area of soil around 20 centimetres. So we're not getting any information above that. Sometimes they're put in where that top sensor's at 10 centimetres. The Riverina ones were put in as this, so that's what they are. We've got to go with it. Down the bottom, big black circle, there's 3 big blue buttons. So this is the front screen. And you click on those big blue buttons, and I will have done this numerous times during my talk to get other details coming up. So if you want more details about the probe, you click on the More Probe button. If you want more details about the pasture, you click on the More Pasture detail. If you want to view the regional map, which will be the next screen I show you, it's because I just clicked on the regional map. So there's the map of the probes in the Riverina LLS. So if you look on the left-hand side, we're talking about Henty, the Rock, Ganmain, Beckham. If we're on the right-hand side, we're at Gaylong, we're up at Young, down out Adelong, Tumut Way, we're in the Auburn Valley, we're at Kiamba, etc. So all of them are circles except for one. There's a square, which is a Mangleplar. A square is where we have a pasture forecast, but not a probe. So it's what's called a virtual site. The circles have a pasture forecast and a probe. Now, the percentage figures are between 20 centimetres and 60 centimetres. How much moisture is that site holding at present? So if it was 100%, you'd say that the soil is carrying 100% of the plant available water that it can hold. We have one site there virtually at zero, which is saying it's as dry as we've got. Now, these probes went in the ground on the 1st of October. The longer they're in the ground, the stronger the numbers get. The one thing I can tell you, with most of those sites being red and with pretty low numbers, the numbers we are recording now are getting close to the lowest numbers we've had since the probes went in on the 1st of October. And interesting, when I was going through some of the sites this morning, down at 60 centimetres, we're starting to see things really dry out. So while the accuracy of these numbers will be better in another 6 months, those low numbers are accurate. We have got a very dry profile at present, as of today. You might say, why are we only going down to 60 centimetres? I first put my probe in the ground out at Bookham in 1998. So I've been looking at soil moisture probes in pastures now for over 25 years. What we have learned over that time is that the moisture in the top 60 centimetres, regardless of what pasture type you have, which really drives production. And a lot of pastures, once the top 40 centimetres dries out, pastures will shut down. But we have two sites near one another, and they're sort of almost in the middle of the screen, where we've got one at 73% and one at 1%. And you think, oh, that can't be right. So what I'm going to do is just flick through some information that's on other pages in the site, just to try and be confident in our mind that what we're seeing is in fact true and just not rubbish. So the two sites is one at Dennisere and one at Juners Roofs. The Dennisere one was the high one, Juners Roofs the low one. So I click the More Probe Detail big blue button, and you drop down and you see this. So that is, these probes started giving us information about the 1st of October. So on the left-hand side, 1st of October 2024. This graph normally displays 12 months. We haven't got 12 months, so it will keep running. Over time, you can compare 1 year against another, and you can actually look at 5 years of historical data. Producers who have that data find very useful. So the colour represents the various probe depths. So on the very left-hand side, we're starting off at high levels, and we're most likely pretty close to a full profile at that point. Different characteristics. The one on the left drops off very quickly and almost gets to zero in November. The one on the right went at a different sort of pace. We got those late November, December rains, and everything responded. The response on the Dennisere site was a lot higher. The response in Junee reefs wasn't quite as substantial, but then one's held and the other one's dropped. Let's keep checking. If I go down a bit lower under that graph, I actually get the rainfall from the two sites. So while Junee got more rain in November and in fact early December, they've virtually had nothing in 2025, whereas the other site has had potentially 70 mils, maybe compared to 5. So that's the rainfall data is starting to give us a reason why we're seeing differences in those two graphs. The other thing you need to look at is the next one. So this one we're at now, to find this information, I'm over on the pasture forecast side and I've clicked the more pasture detail button. When you come up there, this is model data. It uses a CSIRO program called GrassGrow, which I've been using with producer groups since the year 2000. Very powerful model, gives us robust data. You set it up, and so the Genesis site really has got annual grass, subclover, and phalaris. So we've really got a pasture which at this time of year is basically either an annual, so nothing's happened, or the phalaris is dormant. So we've got a pasture that's not utilising water. On the right-hand side, the Junee reef set up is subclover and lucerne. So we've got lucerne in there. So that rain that fell at the Junee reef side would have been, the lucerne would have been using that moisture. So helps pull the moisture down on that right-hand side, whereas the pasture on the left-hand side is basically dormant through that, which also explains while they got the rain, nothing was green. So therefore we haven't been pulling moisture out. So when we look at a number of pieces of information, it's making sense why we saw those two sites, which weren't that far apart, having quite radically different numbers in the probe. So the point of showing that is there's a number of sites where you can go to and pick up bits of information. Why do we have the pasture types up there? That's reflective of the main pasture types on the property where the probes were installed. You can see in the bottom right-hand corner on both sides, you'll see a red dot where it says the moisture probe and then a white line around it. The pasture forecast needs 8 pieces of climatic data, which we can't get from the probe. And also we want historical data, which we can't get from the probe. So the pasture forecast side is driven by 5-kilometre gridded data, which we get from, which BOM produce for all of Australia. So all of Australia is split up into 5-kilometre square grids, and there's daily weather data put in those grids. Now, to do that, they're averaged. So the average of that grid isn't going to reflect exactly what happens to every property in that. In a 5-kilometre square grid, we know what rainfall's been like of late. It could vary. Temperature doesn't vary much. A lot of the other factors, rainfall's the one that moves around a bit. But when we've looked at it over time, it's a pretty good indicator unless you get a radically small, intense storm come through, and we had that at one site this spring where the moisture probe copped a storm and virtually the surrounding area missed out. But that's all we can do. We can't, there's no other way we can run it. So let's move on. Now, this again is on the more pasture detail side. The model, GrassGrow, runs its own water balance. So it gets daily weather data, rainfall, temperature, wind speed, evaporation, all these things. And it's working out what's going on all the time, and that's the moisture that drives pasture production or doesn't drive pasture production because it's dry. The probe presents data for us daily, and it presents it at those depths we saw, 23 to 60. In this case, what the model is telling us is how the current situation is, which is the red dots, compares to the same dates, same days over the last 30 years. So in that box plot, so in the box itself, There's 30 years of data in that whole thing. 15 years of data sits in the box. 7 years of data is above, 7 years of data below. 15, 7, 7, we'll add that up to 30. The line's the median point. So if we look at the Adelong site, now this is only the pasture forecast site is updated every 7 days. Now at the start, it said it was updated 3 days ago. So this dot is the average soil moisture at Adelong for the 6th, 7th and 8th of March. When it's updated in a week, we'll add 7 days onto that. So the thing will give us some indication around the 14th or 15th of March. So the red dot is in the box, but it's down towards the end. You might say we're about 30% of moisture. For this time of year over the last 30 years, I'll go the other way and say 70% of years we're carrying more moisture in the soil than we are at present. But it's carrying about 23 mils. And if we look at that scale, it's getting up in the high areas up to 80, 90 millimetres of moisture. And this is in the plant available moisture in the root zone. If we duck across to the other side, which is just the Tarcutta site, now its red dot is way up the top. It's near the 75% level. So for this site, it's carrying an abnormal amount of moisture for this time of year, the 7th, 8th and 9th, 6th, 7th and 8th of March. But if you look at the two, Adelong's carrying 23 mils of moisture, Tarcutta's carrying 29. The Tarcutta site, the soil, and it's just driven by the soil characteristics of the area, it can't hold as much moisture as the Adelong site. So the Adelong soil is a soil which is a bigger bucket of soil. So if it's fully wet, it can carry 80 or 90 mils. This one, if it's fully wet, might only carry 30 odd mils. Right. So that's a few things. So get the Adelong soil full, it's going to go for longer. The Tarcutta soil is a soil which is going to need more rain inputs, or it's going to be up and down. So that's how you look at that. So you can cross any of these sites, go to this and get a feel for where's moisture sitting now compared to history.
Real sorry, we've just got John with his hand up.
Yep.
Yeah, just got a question there. The bottom point you had there was the PAW was average relative historic. What does that mean? Because that doesn't look like an average red dot.
No, that's wrong.
Good. Okay. I'll be quiet now.
No, good point. Good point. I must admit, I tend to look at the things and don't always read the description which is given on the left-hand side, but it's certainly not. You wouldn't say that's average. If the red dot was above the 30 millimetres and we're getting near the line, I might be prepared, but it's certainly not at an average level. In fact, the comment is exactly the same at the bottom on the right-hand side. So we need to look at that, and I think we need to cull those comments because they're not right. So thanks for that, John. You could look at this site a lot of times, and sometimes you just gloss over things, whereas you look at things a bit more critically because it's new.
And Michael, sorry, hand up.
Yeah, look, just reiterating there that it is an average. I think that comes up, Phil, and it's not correct, but it's in that confidence interval box. So it says average when it should say it has 75% confidence or something like that. It comes up regularly, so it is a slight error. Slight error of wording.
Quite, yeah. To some degree, I think we could do away with some of those words on the right-hand side. Now, I've just gone and picked another site. Look at the graph on the left-hand side and the left axis. If I turn my head on an angle, it tells me it's available green herbage, kilograms of dry matter per hectare. The heading, projected green herbage available. All we are showing you is what's happening to green. The black line is what's happened in 2025. I'll come to the coloured lines. I'll come to the shading later. The purpose of talking about this is that black line during the second half of February's rapidly dropped off. And people, when they're first at the site and not used to it, they think, I've got no feed left. What that's telling us is the green feed has disappeared. Where's it disappeared to? It's moved from the green pool to the dead pool. At present, you're not seeing the dead pool increase. One of our plans that the next iteration of the website is there'll be a dead graph. So as the green goes down, the dead goes up. So that's what's happening on your farm. One's going down, one's going up. So people sometimes miss that. Oh, I've got no food. Yes, you have. Now, you do get an indication by one of the other things that's displayed is a ground cover. So that's taking account of all the material covering the surface. And we'll see that, in fact, during February, ground covers at the start of March has shot up, which is a reflection of material that was growing. It's now come down. So the ground cover is not a problem. But it's not as if you've got bare. Some people look at the one on the left and say, I've got bare soil. No, you haven't. There's a heap of material well above historical levels. So at times of year, at the end of the growth phase of pastures, say in springtime, or if we're in the Hunter Valley at present where the Kikuyu is shutting down, we're seeing this enormous drop off in the black line. It's not because the stock are eating it, it's just that the green material is moving from one pool, the green pool, to the dead pool. Now let's start describing what these graphs are. So again, I've circled green herbage. Keep that in your mind because people keep forgetting about it. The shaded colours at the back, there's 4 shaded colours because we need to include the white, top and bottom. I've circled a little descriptor on the right-hand side. So the red material, the red area is covering the data. This is 30 years of historical data for that 5K square grid. So every site that has its 5K square grid, which has got a different weather set, and we run that for 30 years. So this is the average from 1995, 1st of January 1995, to the end of December 2024. So we've got 30 years of green pasture data over this forecast period, which is predominantly March, April, May, and June. The red is covering the years which reflect the 10 to 25%. So there's a number of years in that white area below the red, where the red hits the brown. If you think of that as a line, that's the 25% mark. So a quarter of the years, green herbage is at that point and below. Where brown meets green, that's the 50-50 line. 50% of years green herbage is below it, 50% of years above. If you look at the brown, that's between 25 and 50. So there's 25% of years or a quarter of the years pastures sitting in that brown area. And then above, we just go 50 to 90%. And then there are some years above the white area at the top. The reason we do the historical data is it gives you a reference point. To some degree, it's where you currently sit against your historical that's more important than the herbage mass figure on the left-hand side. So this is a graph for the property we've set up. Now, in a particular area, if provided the rainfall's been similar, properties will often be, they might have different kilograms of dry matter in the pasture because they've got a different fertiliser history or stocking rate or a whole range of things like that. But there'll be consistency of how they're performing against the historical trend. So if we look where the black line has been, it started off way down the bottom in the red. Those late February rains came through, good moisture. Pastures, because of the type of pasture at this site, they were able to respond. And they, by the start of March, had put the amount of green feed in the system was well above average for that time of year. But then there was no follow-up rain, and that material has quickly started to disappear. It's going again from the green to the dead pool, and it's now down in that territory between 50 and 25%.
Phil, we just got another question from John. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. So the green herbage, that's increases as the model says there is more and more growing, and as the model says there's less and less growing, that's when the percentage of or the available herbage biomass drops. It's fully modelled.
Yep. So this has got stock. There's stock on these properties.
Yep.
And the stocking rate and time of things, etc., is in that one of the descriptions I showed earlier, where the pasture description was. So you can go there and you can see, is it a cattle operation? Is it a sheep operation? When do they lamb? When do they calve? What sort of stocking rates on? What's the pasture? What's the soil fertility like?
Yep.
All that information's there. So this is the green available herbage driven by what are the stock consumed and how is the pasture performing, driven by climatic conditions, principally soil moisture.
Okay, thank you.
So that V-shaped response in that black line, the first bit is good moisture came into the system, and then it turns around because the moisture's disappeared, and suddenly growth rate might have gone from 40 or 50 kilos a day to zero because the plants are running out of water.
Thank you.
Now, we also give you forecasts. And this is an attempt to just try and show you, build up how we generate the forecast. So if I go back, I've basically run the next couple of slides. I've basically run it from where the end of that black line is. I was able to go in today, grab the data, ran the model up to that point, and that's what I've done. So the program knows what moisture's in the soil, what's the green feed available, what's the stock, where are they at. So there's about 50 or 60 pieces of information that the model stores at the end of each day. What I've then done is wanted to generate a forecast. Given what conditions were like, and I'm just going to say it was the 7th of March. Given what things were like on the 7th of March, what would happen if we put a variety of climatic conditions on that site for the next, I've gone March, April, May. So I've only run it for 3 months. And where do we get that climatic condition? We go back for that 5K square grid and grab that 30 years of historical daily weather data, which we use to generate that history one, and we put that on it. So in this example here, all I've done is grab 4 years. I grabbed 205, I grabbed 213, I grabbed 220, and I grabbed 223. The starting conditions were all the same. Now, I purposely picked 2 very tough years, 05 and 13 at this site, and 2 good years. So you see what happens if we put the 05 conditions on the current things, that's the purple line. We bip and then we trend in a direction you don't like looking at. That's green herbage up the left-hand side. If the red line's 2013, you can see where it goes. 2020, in fact, we dropped off, and by the end of March, we were the line was in the worst position of any of them, but then obviously good moisture came in and things rapidly took off. So the ability at this site, if you get the right good amount of moisture coming in, the ability to respond is massive. And then 2023 was just a very strong year, and the reason it's already higher than the starting point is these figures are an average of 7 days, and the growth rates we were achieving in March, because conditions were so good, has pushed it up. So that's just 4 years, but we do that for 30 years. If we put 30 years of lines up there, it just becomes unintelligible. Now I'll put up 4 dotted lines. These are the 10%, the 25, the 50, and the 75% of those 30 years. So So the black dotted line is is the mythical average median, really. It's the median line of, given the conditions on the 7th of March, given the variety of weather we've had over the last 30 years, the black line is the median. Half the years are better than that, half the years are below. So what this is showing us is that the 05 and 13 year was contributing a lot of the data that's been pulled together to create that red dotted line, which is a 10% line. So in 1 in 10 years, that would occur. The brown dotted line is a 1 in 4. Black is the 50-50, and the green is 75 years or below it. I could show the 90%. I don't do that because often I think that's just way over the top. And the 2 good years have ended up being well above. The 2020 is the interesting one, where it touched down on the 25% line, and within about 3 weeks we were through the 75% line, because we have the ability to have tremendous pasture production in autumn if the weather conditions, mainly moisture, are in our favour. And the 2023 line, without going through it, is most likely the best line you'll ever see. Now, I just noticed I put up the top. This is for the Kingsvale site near Young. So that's how we create this pasture forecast. We use 30 years of historical data and we put it up as percentiles. So now this is in fact the Kingsvale site again. It's the same black line I was showing you before, but here are now the forecast lines through to the end of June, and I've just ticked. You see in the top right hand corner the key. You can choose what lines you tick. I've ticked the bottom 4. I've left the 90% one off. So the red line, where's it tracking? At present, the black line's tracking downwards, sort of along the red and the 10 and the 25% line. Historically, the matching pair historically for the red line is where the white meets the red. That's the 10% historical line. So to some degree, the 10% forecast line is tracking where the 10% historical one is. The brown line's tracking a bit lower. The average line, the yellow, if it was tracking historical, it'd be sitting up where the red hits the green. So look, that forecast is not, it's not a positive forecast, but at this stage I wouldn't call it a disaster. We are in the middle of March, so let's not jump at shadows. We are in southern New South Wales, and this is typically our dry time. If we look at the historical data, it gives us an idea of the pasture curves. So, there has been periods of time when there's been no green feed at all at the start of May, and it kicks up after that. If you look at where the red and the brown line meet, the major slope of that line occurs in May. Where the brown meets the green, it sort of starts occurring in April. In the really good years, we're driven by summer rain, but it's the huge peak occurs in April. So historically, we're not in unusual territory, and historically, we have grown a lot of feed at times down the past where we are. And my view now is I really regard June, certainly the first half of June, and say out in the Kingsvale area, I think June is now part of autumn rather than being part of winter, just given the temperatures we're receiving. So that's how the forecast lines are generated. Now, they are generated once at the start of each month. So those forecast lines were generated at the 1st of March, and they will not change for the rest of March. The black line will keep being added to. Every 7 days, the black line gets extended. But the weather has to have occurred before we can draw the black line, because we're actually recording what's occurred in this month. So that black line gets extended 3 times. it'll be about the 16th, it'll be extended again. It'll be about the 23rd, it's extended again. On the 1st of April, those forecast lines are recalculated and another month comes on. So it'll be April, May, June, and July. Now, I've pulled up the Kiamba site, going just to go to a different locality. And I'm highlighting those two buttons down in the bottom right-hand corner. So this is on the, well, you've got two parts you can access this, on the front screen or on the more pasture detailed one. So again, if we look under the word pasture forecast up the top, last updated 3 days ago. So today is about the 12th, so the update might have been to the 9th of March. So what's happened at Kiamba, we got growth during February, but again, same old stories before. Things went dry, and the greens rapidly disappeared again. Now, what I described to you before about how we did the forecast is what you're seeing on the left-hand side. That's climatology. When you use measured historical data for a site, it's called climatology. You're using the climate data for that area. So that's what is occurred on the left-hand side. And the years used is 1995 to 2024. We use every year, we drop 1 year off and bring another year on. On the right-hand side, you'll notice the button clicked is the one Access S. So what's Access S? Access S is the Bureau of Meteorology's program that they use to do their seasonal forecasting. So every day it brings in a whole range of climate data from around the world. So every climate group in the world every day are sharing information. So every day the Australian Bureau of Meteorology sends climatic data about the Southern Hemisphere to Europe, which the Europeans put in their model to generate the daily forecast for Europe, because by putting in climatic data from the Southern Hemisphere, it improves the accuracy of their climate forecasts in Europe and vice versa. Bureaus were in fact the first organisations in the world who shared information between each other long before the United Nations. So there's data being pulled in all the time. It goes into the Access S model and it's run every day, generates 11 outputs. So on the right-hand side, we are using 33 forecasts that we get from the Bureau to generate the lines. Left-hand side is 30 years of actual data for that 5K square grid. Right-hand side is 33 year runs of forecast data for that 5K square grid. Every 5K square grid gets a different set of data out of Access. So what you're looking for, are there major differences? So you'd say, well, the red and the brown line, in fact, all the lines have dropped a bit on the right-hand side compared to the left-hand side when we're talking about May and June. I personally don't regard those as major differences. I'm looking for major differences before I'm going to maybe react to it. The year when we did see it would have been 2002, where on Access, the forecast lines were all up above the green. So that even the 10% forecast line was up in that white territory above the green in that El Nino, in that La Nina year. That was the year when we've seen by far the greatest difference between climatology and Access. Again, I just picked another site, so I've now gone to our most western site, Beckham, a lucerne pasture on this mixed farm. And again, we see the response we got. There was that February rain, the lucerne responded, didn't last long, cut out. you might say this time that the access one looks slightly better than the climatology, but again, to me, the differences are that small. I'm not getting that excited about it. So that's the difference between the two, climatology and access. You decide which one you want to look at. There's just a couple of things I think you need to realise. Farming forecaster gets the access data, but all we get is the data for the last 3 days of the previous month. So those access lines on the right, we're using data that came out of the access model on the last 3 days of February. So that was the 26th, the 27th, and the 28th. 11 runs a day, 3 days, 33 runs, right? So we've taken 3 days of data. During the month, if you go onto the BOM website, their access data gets updated most likely 3 or 4 times a month. In Farming Forecaster, it doesn't. So if halfway through March, some major climate driver suddenly appeared and it radically changed what access was saying, you would pick that up looking at the BOM site. You are not going to pick it up off Farming Forecaster because we use the last 3 days and those lines don't get redrawn till the first day of the next month. So I just want people to be clear about that. And just on that, in fact, this is my last slide. I'm of the view that the BOM produce a lot of quality data. I don't think their presentation of it or how they explain it is anywhere near as good as the data they produce. And certainly we saw that a couple of years ago. When I go onto the BOM site, I'm not interested in just looking at one of those coloured maps. If you go to one of those coloured maps and you expand it up, you can click on it any point on the map and you get this sort of information. So I just did 2 at random. I clicked on one and it came up as the Rock, and I clicked on another site, it came up at Cootamundra. So you can do this for whatever time period you want. I've just done it for the outlook for April to June. Why I prefer looking at this is it gives me the black dotted line across is the historical average. There's a 20% chance of where that black line is over a number of periods, and it's giving you some idea of how much moisture. So for those 3 months, the lowest fifth of our rainfall will give you 92. The top fifth will give you more than 200 mils. So it's giving you an idea of the amount of moisture. And what we're looking at there is, are those columns for this year? So the dotted line is the historical benchmark. Bars are what the forecast is saying for this year. And that's also expressed in those percentages above. Again, when I look at that, am I seeing is something radically driving us drier or wetter? Or is it just bouncing around the 20% line, which means there's no strong driver and it could go anyway? You know, we have a 1 in 5 chance of being in the bottom decile. We have a 1 in 5 chance of being in that top one. And if I look at both of those sites, I'm not seeing anything that's radically driving our climate away from climatology, which is the first box. Hannah, that's it. Any questions?
Beautiful. Thank you, Phil. Any questions from anyone? I've got one, Phil. Looking at the probe history data based on rainfall. Yeah, thank you. You said that it can only have 5 years to compare to. Is that just based on the fact that the website can't hold more data than that, or?
It's set at 5 years at present. We haven't got to the 5 years. So your comment about data storage is an issue.
Yeah.
And And you've got to remember this is storing a lot of data points. So
Yeah.
it's storing about for each of the sensor depths, and it's storing about 5 points a day. So 200 sites, you start getting into, it does start getting up. And in fact, the company who hosts the site is a mob in Bendigo called Square V. They've certainly had to go and upgrade their computer storage because of the site. So yeah, it is a storage, and yeah, look, I suppose we'll cover that. I think 5 years is a pretty robust thing to be able to look back on.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say about this is the beauty is that you don't have to rely on your memory of what things were like last year. A couple of years ago, I worked with a group of producers in the Yass district. I think there are 10 producers. And I asked them, it was March, and I asked them how they thought moisture in the soil was this year compared to the year before. And all 10 of them said, oh, we're a lot drier this year. And when we went around and looked at the probes, which covered where the group were from, and I think there was about 6 probes, all of the probes were telling us we were carrying more moisture in the soil than we were the previous year. So exact opposite of what the producers thought. And we talked about, well, why is that occurring? And a similar March to this, we'd just had 3 days of 35 degrees with hot westerly winds, and the country was showing the effects of that weather. So most likely that period of hot, dry winds and the impact it had on the countryside just got them thinking, oh, geez, we're a lot drier, where in fact we weren't. There was more moisture in the soil at depth than we'd had the year before. So the beauty about this is you don't have to rely on your memory. You can just look back at it.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for Phil while we've got him? Oh, that's all right. Oh, beautiful. Charlie, got your hand up.
Right, I've got a question. So, the plant available water modelled at my Kingsvale site is 31 mils. But
Yep.
I'm showing next to no moisture in the probe at all. It seems like 0 now. Does that make sense?
The probe is, we are still working out. You're at the lowest readings that the probe has been since they've been put in.
Yep.
That's not to say that then they might go even lower.
Yep. Yep. That was my question. Probably, I'm just trying to work out if that probe's telling the truth at the moment, or is it still figuring it out?
It's still working it out.
Yep. Yeah.
It depends on the circumstances and what the weather conditions are like. The probes could take, the longest I've known is 3 years to really settle down. That was a probe put in an hard leather, and you had a drought for 3 years. So we had probes in the ground in Tasmania, and at depth it was 2.5 years before we found out that the soils could store a lot more moisture at depth than what we had in there before. So the probes at present have got error bars around them. The modelled data, everything is the same. So the pastures don't change. The stocking rate doesn't change. The soil doesn't change. The only thing that changes is the rainfall.
Yeah.
Right. So to some degree, early on, the box plot can be a bit more robust than the probe. The other area where we can get the difference is if the rainfall in that 5K square grid ended up being higher than what fell at your probe.
Yeah. Right.
That's the other factor. And if we think about it, if you look at most rainfall events now, we don't get a rainfall reading on our property, do we? We get
No.
we
No
get
way.
we get a rainfall reading in our gauge, and we get a whole lot of different readings across the property.
About 5 different ones across the property in each rainfall event.
Yeah. So the box plot, to some degree, the probe tells us the result of the rain in that 10 square meters where the probe was.
Yeah.
The box plot will tend to average what the rainfall events have been a bit better.
Yeah.
So at this time of year, when we are in a storm event, we can get a bit of noise. As I said, at the Bookham site in October, the Bookham probe ended up getting 50 mils that the rest of the 5K square grid didn't get. So I don't know, it must have been 100 metres wide and it went through.
Yeah,
So
which that can happen just about, can't it? So
yeah, so at that last springtime, if you looked at the Bookham probe, it was telling you that the soil was 75% full of moisture, whereas when we looked at the box plot, our current moisture was down at the 25% mark, and that was just purely the effect that the difference between what the probe copped and what the 5K gridded data. So they're the reasons why we can have some differences between the two of them.
So we're just going to let it run for a while, and then if they don't correlate, we're going to try and do something after that.
I check those numbers about every 2 weeks on your probe.
Yeah.
Right. So I can go into the back. In fact, I did it this morning.
Yeah.
I went down, and at a number of sites, what was I doing? I was taking the lowest value lower. Right.
Yeah.
Because the last time I looked at it, it was at X, and now it was X minus 5. And if I go, it depends what happened. I could go in a fortnight, it might be X minus another 5.
Yeah.
Right. So I just keep doing that till we get to a point on some of the sites which have been going 3 years. I don't worry about checking those now because we've got enough.
Yeah.
But all the new ones, I'll just keep doing that, and then we'll get, we are going to get rain. And so the lowest point will then, I won't have to worry about that. And then as we go through winter and spring, I dare say some of the top points will change at some sites. They'll in fact carry a lot more moisture than what we're already seeing. So hopefully by mid-spring, they've settled down and they're pretty robust.
No worries. That sounds good.
Perfect. Thank you, Charlie. Trish, I'll come back to yours considering it's about Phalaris staggers. John, do you want to go next?
Yes, thanks very much. Hey, Phil, I've just got a question. The actual plant available water, is it calculated from the particle size distribution and soil properties from when the probe was put in? So do you have those fundamental numbers, or do you calculate them on the fly? It sounds like you're doing it on the fly.
No,
experience.
All of Australia was, there's a Soil Atlas of Australia produced by the Bureau of Resource Science, which I don't think exists any longer, which was developed through the 60s, 70s and 80s. So soil scientists went out all over Australia, taking samples of soils, classifying them, taking back to the lab and doing full lab tests on those various soils. So bulk densities, infiltration rates, depths, all of those things. So we use the latitude and longitude which the grid gives us to go into the soil atlas and pick out the major soil types that are represented in that locality. Normally we try a few of them, and we end up having to pick one of those. So it's those soil characteristics that will influence the water model.
Yep.
it only gets daily rainfall data, so it's not getting information that 50 mils fell in 10 seconds. It'll just know that 50 mils fell on that day. So, but we do have some, again, there are runoff characteristics done for all of Australia. So we use the normal runoff characteristics. So it's creating a model to the best of our ability.
Okay, that's good. If rather than using this,
and it's doing that because of those soil characteristics. It's working out how deep the roots can penetrate.
Yeah.
So what you're seeing is the soil moisture in the plant root zone.
Yep.
That might be different from the 60 centimetre probe data. So if you've got a soil which is impacting root development, the roots are only getting down to say 45 centimetres.
Yep.
The plant available water will be for the 45 centimetres, even though the probe will give you data down to 60. And we've got one Tasmanian site, which is a classic for that. The roots only get to 30 centimetres. So you pick it up on the probe that the 40 down to 40 centimetres will be bone dry, and at 50 and 60 centimetres there's a heap of moisture, but the roots just don't get there.
They're not accessible. So can the model take data from the actual site? So you're using soil grid data, but if someone dug a hole and got the analysis done, can we input that numbers into your model?
Yeah. You just go, okay. you just go back into the farm system. The reason we don't do that, the last time I did the work required, I think, which was in 2002, the lab fees were $1,500 for one site. So to get the full data is a lot of work and cost. So that's why we haven't gone down that path. And that's why the probe is just on a percentage. We're not saying on that probe side, we're not saying it's this number of millimeters of water. We're not specifying that because we just haven't got the data to do it. All we're saying is if that's the top and that's the bottom and this is where we are, that's the percentage of the available to the best of our ability.
Okay, thank you.
Beautiful. Any other questions? Phil, we've got one about Phalaris staggers. Would you like to have a stab at it? Otherwise, we can direct it to our district vets. Trish, we can send you.
I'll have a stab at Phalaris staggers.
Righto. So what Tricia said is that the last 2 years they've seen Phalaris staggers. This year, not as much. Any explanation as to why, considering that there's similar conditions and dry matter?
As soon as you come to diseases like that, prolapses, all of those, the first thing you learn if you've been around long enough that they are random, and trying to work out why they're incredibly difficult in 1 year. I don't know whether Trish's comes from down Holbrook way, but like the last couple of years, Holbrook has seen more Phalaris staggers than ever before, and why it makes no sense. So these things occur. We've got two types of these. I suppose there's the true staggers, which they very rarely recover from, or their sudden death. It's driven. Both of them are driven a large degree by high proportion of Phalaris in a paddock and not much else. Green Phalaris in a paddock and not much else to consume. And it's very much a flow rate issue in that if all they've got is Phalaris and they're taking a lot of it in quickly, the system has a lot of trouble dealing with it, and we get the problems. Whereas if they take that compound in at a much slower rate, Often the liver can deal with it, and we don't see the issues. So it can be not what the phalaris is doing, but what some of the other species, and they might not be species you plant. They could be random species that come up, which just might provide enough alternate feed that the scenario doesn't happen. The one classic with all these is if the paddock's got an issue, the worst thing you can do is put stock in there hungry. Phalaris, sudden phalaris death on the tablelands has a very strong correlation with shearing. Sheep have been locked up for a day or 2 days. It gets to 5:30. People will just run them out into the paddock. I'll move them to another paddock in the morning. They come out in the morning and they're dead. It would have been better to leave them in the yards overnight and just take them out. So if stock are dead hungry and they charge into those paddocks where there's just not much other than green phalaris, they'll get into it at a rapid rate, and we get this flow rate problem. So no, I've got no brilliant ideas of why this year isn't as bad as others. We just thank goodness it isn't.
Yeah, Trisha's put in the chat that the shearing correlation makes sense. So that explains it. And she's also from Gaylong rather than Holbrook.
Oh, rightio. Yeah, rightio. Like a number of times I've had people ring me up and it's don't drop stock, hungry stock, whether they're sheep or cattle, out of yards late in the day. You're better to leave them in the yards and do it the next morning.
Perfect. Thank you, Phil. Anyone else before we move on? I know we're past 8 o'clock now. So I actually might just hand over to Michael Campbell, who's my team leader, just to give a bit more of an update onto where this project is heading now. And yeah, we've had 4 new soil moisture probes installed within the Western Riverina. So yeah, Michael, do you want to give a bit more of a word onto that?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I'll keep it very quick, under a minute. Basically, we've got Sally Ware on here from out at Hay, and John Lees as well has been working on the project. So we've got a grazing decisions in the rangeland project at the moment kicked off. We're using 4 soil moisture probes. Phil's going to work with Grass Grow and John and Sally and try to model those sites. Eventually, they will be appearing on the Farming Forecaster website. We've got a lot of soil details out there, Phil, as well. A lot of details being collected, and that's just unique. We're going to have a look at it's a very different environment to the higher rainfall eastern environment. And then probably the next iteration we're looking at is around our cropping farms that some already have moisture probes that aren't part of this project, but and potentially looking at how we can assist farmers with making decisions around cropping decisions during the growing season. So I guess the key thing here is to watch this space. Sally and John have been working pretty hard on out there in Hay, and hopefully if this all goes to plan and it becomes a good resource to help everyone with their decision making across the Riverina, then we'll keep investing in it and keeping it live for everybody.
Perfect. Thanks, Michael. Right, we might wrap up tonight with that, unless anyone has any questions before we finish. But otherwise, yeah, huge thank you to Phil for making the time and running us through that presentation. Thank you all for your questions and for your time. I'll stop the recording at that, and that'll finish us up for